What the fuck? John exclaimed as he blinked in disbelief at the alien ship hovering right in front of him in the asteroid field, its sleek form clearly visible despite the shimmering cloak that was supposed to render it invisible. John Bennett, a grizzled 35-year-old human cargo ship captain, had been on a routine mission transporting supplies between Earth colonies when his ship's sensors suddenly detected a strange energy signature nearby. Curious, he had decided to investigate. As he maneuvered his ship closer, he spotted it, a cloaked alien vessel hiding amidst the drifting space rocks. His heart raced as he realized the implications. This ship belonged to the Pakleds, a technologically advanced race that had remained hidden from the galactic community for eons by using their cloaking technology. No one had ever laid eyes on a Pakled ship before, and yet here John was, staring right at one. He hailed the cloaked ship on comms, not sure what to expect. The face of a scowling Pakled commander filled his view screen, his bulbous eyes narrowing as he glared at John. "Human, I am Commander Spica of the Pakled Ascendancy," the alien said in a guttural voice. "Explain how you detected our ship immediately." John swallowed. I could see it with my eyes." Spica recoiled as if slapped, his face contorting in shock and disbelief. "Impossible! Our cloaking field bends all electromagnetic radiation, including visible light. You should perceive nothing but empty space." "Well, I hate to break it to you, but your cloak isn't working too well. I can see your ship plain as day," John replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Spica pounded a fist on his console, his features twisting into an angry scowl. "You will accompany us to the Galactic Council headquarters on the Pakled homeworld immediately. The Council will want to interrogate you and study this anomaly." John shook his head. "Sorry, but I have a delivery to make. I'm not about to reveal sensitive information about human capabilities to a bunch of alien politicians. My cargo—" "Your cargo is irrelevant," Spica snapped. Suddenly, the space around John's ship rippled as a dozen more Pakled warships decloaked, weapon arrays glowing ominously as they surrounded his lone vessel. "You have no choice, human," Spica growled. "Come with us or be destroyed. The might of the Pakled Ascendancy is not to be trifled with." John's mind spun as he assessed his options. He was outnumbered and outgunned. His small cargo ship stood no chance against a Pakled battle fleet. Gritting his teeth, he nodded to Spica. "Fine, I'll come with you, but my ship better reach its destination safely." "You have my word," Spica replied, his tone making it clear that his word meant very little. As the Pakled ships locked tractor beams onto John's vessel and began towing it toward a shimmering wormhole, John felt a deep sense of trepidation settle in his gut. This was no routine first contact scenario. By discovering the vulnerability in the Pakled's cloaking technology, he had just stumbled onto a secret that could reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. And now he was being dragged before the Galactic Council to face questions he dared not answer truthfully. He could only hope that whatever happened next, he would find a way to protect humanity. Because if the Pakleds discovered that human eyesight could consistently pierce their cloaking fields, it would mean the end of their nigh unstoppable stealth fleets. It would mean war, and the humans would be right in the firing line. The survival of John's entire species hung in the balance. It was all on him now. John paced the confines of his cell, his mind racing. The energy barrier shimmered before him, an impenetrable wall blocking his escape. He had to get out of here, had to warn Earth about the Pakled's vulnerability. But how? He scanned every inch of the cell, looking for something, anything he could use. Then he spotted it, a small panel, slightly ajar, tucked away in a shadowed corner. Heart pounding, John pried it open with his fingers. A tangle of multicolored wires greeted him, pulsing with energy. John hesitated. One wrong move and he could fry himself or trigger an alarm, but he had no choice. Gritting his teeth, he carefully began rerouting the exposed wiring, trying to remember his training as a ship captain. Connect the green wire to the blue terminal. Splice the red and yellow. Sweat beaded his forehead as he worked. Tense minutes ticking by. Finally, with a low hum, The force field flickered and died. John held his breath, hardly daring to believe it. He was free. On the pack-led homeworld, Commander Spica strode into the council chamber, his face set in hard lines. The room was abuzz with agitated conversation as the other leaders took their seats. Scientists and military strategists ringed the periphery, anxious faces illuminated by the glow of data screens. "This human ability to see through our cloaks changes everything," Spica said without preamble. "If Earth learns of this vulnerability, if they develop countermeasures, our stealth fleet will be neutralized. We will lose our greatest advantage." Agitated murmurs filled the room. A counselor from the Zargon sector leaned forward. "What do you propose, Commander?" Spica slammed a fist on the table. "We must strike first. Launch an immediate attack on Earth. Eliminate their government and military leadership in one swift blow. Seize control before they have a chance to react and disseminate this knowledge." "Rash action could be disastrous," another council member cautioned. "If we attack without provocation, other galactic powers may intervene. It could escalate into a full-scale war." The debate raged back and forth, voices rising in anger and frustration. No consensus emerged. In his commandeered ship, John pushed the unfamiliar pack-led controls to their limits. Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed angry red as the craft shuddered and groaned around him. Through the forward viewports, he could see the pursuing pack-led warships, their hulls glinting in the starlight. A plasma bolt sizzled past, barely missing his ship. John wrenched the controls hard to port, sending the ship careening into a dizzying spiral. The inertial dampeners strained to compensate, and John felt his stomach lurch. He had to get away, had to escape the pack-led guns long enough to plot a hyperspace jump. His hands flew over the console, frantically trying to coax more speed from the straining engines. More plasma blasts lit up the void, explosions bracketing his ship. The hull shuddered as a glancing shot impacted the shields. Damage alerts screamed in warning. John gritted his teeth and pushed on. The computer suddenly beeped in recognition. It had a hyperspace solution. John keyed in the activation sequence, praying the unfamiliar ship could take the strain. With a wrenching jolt, the stars outside blurred into streaks of light, and the ship leapt forward into the swirling vortex of hyperspace. But something was wrong. New alarms wailed, the cloaking device pulsing erratically. The ship shook violently, and through the haze of distortion outside, John saw unstable energies surging around the hull. The radiation leak was interacting with the jump field. With a sickening lurch, the ship spat out of hyperspace like a bullet from a railgun. John was thrown from his seat as the ship tumbled wildly, consoles exploding in showers of sparks. He hauled himself to the controls, fighting down nausea, trying to stabilize the careening craft. The star field outside was unfamiliar, no known constellations or astrogation markers. He was lost in uncharted space. The cloaking device sputtered and died, unable to maintain the field. John collapsed back in the command chair, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He was stranded, alone, in a damaged ship without a functional cloak. He had no idea where he was or how to get back to human space. But one thing he did know, he had to find a way. Because every minute he spent lost out here was another minute the Pack-Leds had to plan their next move. Another minute Earth remained ignorant of the threat. He had to repair the ship, had to navigate home, had to warn humanity. The stakes couldn't be higher. The survival of his entire species, the future of the stars itself, rested on his shoulders. Because his simple act of seeing through a Pack-Led cloak had set in motion a chain of events that could reshape the balance of power forever. The board was set, the pieces in motion. A conflict unlike any the Milky Way had ever seen loomed on the horizon, and John, out in the uncharted void, was the only one who knew it was coming. John's hands flew over the alien controls, desperately trying to stabilize the damaged Pack-Led ship. Sparks showered from ruptured conduits as he rerouted power to the failing cloaking systems. The ship groaned and shuddered around him. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered. "Don't fail me now." With a final surge, the cloaking field flickered back to life. John let out a shaky breath, but His relief was short-lived. The hyperdrive remained offline, leaving him stranded in unknown space. He pulled up the ship's star charts, searching for any familiar constellations. Nothing matched. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the reality of his situation sank in. "Okay, think," he said to himself. "Where the hell am I?" After hours of calculations, John finally pinpointed his location, the Zytron Void. His stomach dropped. He was far beyond any charted space, in a treacherous region of dark matter nebulae. Gritting his teeth, John plotted a series of short jumps to skirt the most dangerous areas. It was risky, but he had no choice. He had to warn Earth about the Pakled threat. The ship lurched as he initiated the first jump. Alarms blared. The hyperdrive whined, straining against the dark matter currents. John's knuckles turned white as he gripped the controls. Suddenly, the ship dropped out of hyperspace with a bone-jarring crash. John was thrown from his seat as the vessel spun wildly. Through the view screen, he saw a massive shape looming before him, the shattered hulk of an enormous spacecraft. "Shit!" John yanked hard on the controls, narrowly avoiding a collision. The ship groaned in protest as he pushed it into a steep dive. His eyes darted to the sensors. They were picking up dozens, no, hundreds, of similar wrecks scattered across the system. An ancient battlefield frozen in the void of space. Warning lights flashed as the unstable hyperdrive began to overload. John had no choice. He'd have to set down for repairs. He spotted a rogue planet drifting nearby and aimed for it, pushing the damaged ship to its limits. The hull screamed as he plunged into the atmosphere, fighting for control. With a bone-jarring impact, John brought the ship down on the barren surface. He sat there for a long moment, chest heaving as he tried to calm his racing heart. That's when he saw them. Metallic shapes stirring in the shadows of the wrecked ships. Dormant war machines, awakening after eons of slumber. "Oh no," John breathed. He sprinted for the airlock, but it was too late. The sentries were already converging on his position, weapons glowing with alien energy. John sealed himself in the maintenance ducts, initiating a full lockdown. Outside, he heard the hiss and sizzle of corrosive weapons eating through the hull. Layer by layer, the cloaking field was being stripped away. John huddled in the cramped tunnel, mind racing. He was trapped, alone, his ship under siege by ancient killing machines. As the sentries continued their relentless assault, John realized with growing dread that his odds of escaping this alien graveyard were growing slimmer by the second. The sentries tore into the ship's hull like metal locusts, stripping away the cloaking field layer by layer. John's fingers flew across the alien controls, desperately trying to reroute power to shore up the failing cloak. The ship's computer flashed angry red warnings in response, rejecting his commands. "Damn it!" John pounded his fist on the console. The Pakled cybernetics had locked him out, treating him as an intruder. Alarms blared as the outer hull breached, the relentless war machines pouring in. With no other choice, John sealed himself in the cramped maintenance tunnels. He crawled through conduits thick with cables and piping, the sentry's weapons fire echoing through the ship. Reaching a junction box, he pried off the cover and began rerouting plasma lines. "This better work," he muttered, sweat dripping from his brow as he spliced wires together. A sentry rounded the corner, its weapons powering up with an ominous hum. John yanked the final connection. Superheated plasma erupted from the ruptured conduits, engulfing the war machine in a sea of blue fire. It collapsed in a heap of molten metal. John allowed himself a grim smile. It wouldn't hold them off forever, but it bought him time. On the Pakled homeworld, Commander Spica paced before a bank of holographic displays. "I want that human found," he snarled at his subordinates. "Deploy the prototype cloak breacher. Bring him to me alive if possible, dead if necessary." A sleek Pakled strike ship rocketed out of the planetary defense grid, its experimental cloaking device rendering it invisible to all known sensors. The hunt was on. Back in the graveyard system, John fought his way to the warp core. It was an audacious attempt, but overloading the core was his only shot at taking out the sentries. The ship shuddered as more war machines breached the hull. John's hands danced across the warp core controls, initiating the overload sequence. Suddenly, a disruptive energy pulse ripped through the ship. The pack-led strike team had arrived. Plasma bolts sizzled past John's head as he dove for cover. He returned fire with his stolen pack-led sidearm, the cramped corridor erupting into a furious firefight. John inched his way toward the warp core, determined to finish what he'd started. A stray bolt from a security drone caught John in the side. He stumbled, gasping in pain, but managed to reach the core. With the last of his strength, he slammed his palm on the overload initiation panel. Warning klaxons blared as the warp core began to destabilize. John's vision blurred as he slumped against the console, darkness closing in. The ship bucked and heaved around him as the pack-led strike team fled, extending their emergency shielding. There was a moment of absolute silence. Then the warp core detonated. A blinding flash of light consumed everything as matter and antimatter annihilated each other. The resulting shockwave obliterated the ancient sentries and twisted the graveyard of derelict ships into new and horrific configurations. When the cosmic fury finally subsided, the pack-led retrieval craft emerged from the chaos. Their specialized shielding had saved them, but of John and his commandeered vessel, there was no sign. Only debris remained, scattered across the void. In his command center, Spica reviewed the mission logs with mounting fury. The human had slipped through his grasp, denying him the prize he sought, but the recordings showed John's final act, the warp core overload. Spica's fists clenched as the implications sank in. Even if the human hadn't survived, it was only a matter of time before others discovered what he had learned. The pack-led advantage was slipping away. "Prepare the war fleets," Spica growled to his officers. "We strike at the human colonies immediately. We cannot allow them time to develop countermeasures." Across pack-led space, cloaked warships stirred to life. The invasion of human territory was about to begin, yet as the mighty armada assembled, questions lingered. Had John truly perished in the blast? And what of humanity's newfound ability to pierce pack-led cloaks? The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance as the looming conflict threatened to engulf the stars. The escape pod tumbled through the void, its lone occupant drifting in and out of consciousness. John Bennett's eyes fluttered open, then closed again as pain racked his body. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead, floating in crimson globules in the zero-gravity environment. Through the pod's tiny viewport, John caught glimpses of debris from the destroyed ship spinning past. His mind struggled to piece together what had happened. The warp core overload, the blinding flash, then darkness. As John's pod drifted, events were unfolding across human space. On the pack-led homeworld, Commander Spica stood before a massive holographic display, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Launch the attack," Spica ordered, his voice cold and calculating. Across pack-led space, vast fleets of warships shimmered and vanished as their cloaking devices engaged. They slipped past human outposts and defense stations undetected, emerging from cloak only when they reached their targets. On the human colony world of New Eden, the first signs of attack came without warning. The night sky lit up with searing plasma bolts raining down from unseen ships high above. Buildings crumbled and fires spread as panicked colonists ran for shelter. "What's happening?" a colonial guard shouted into his comm unit. "I don't see any enemy ships." But there was no response. The pack-led scrambler drones had already knocked out all long-range communications. Similar scenes played out across a dozen human worlds. Cloaked pack-led ships bombarded military installations and population centers with impunity. Human defenders fired blindly into space, their weapons finding no targets. On Earth, alarms blared in the halls of the United Earth Defense Command. Admiral Chen strode into the war room, her face grim as she surveyed the incoming reports. "How did they slip past our early warning systems?" she demanded. "Unknown, sir," a junior officer replied. "We're getting scattered reports of attacks, but no visual confirmation of enemy vessels." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Implement the Argus protocol," she ordered. Deep in secret bunkers across Earth and its colonies, technicians rushed to activate a hidden network of sensor platforms. These highly classified devices had been designed for just such an emergency, to pierce Pakled cloaking technology. As the platforms came online, they began broadcasting a specially tuned quantum chroma field based on the visual data John Bennett had stolen. Almost immediately, the true scope of the Pakled attack became clear. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, Captain Sarah Rodriguez watched in awe as hundreds of enemy ships suddenly appeared on her tactical display. "There they are," she breathed. "All weapons, open fire." Across the battle space, human ships that had been fighting blindly now found their targets exposed. Energy beams and missiles streaked through space, slamming into the hulls of the formerly invisible Pakled vessels. Back on the Pakled homeworld, Spitzer received the shocking news. "Impossible," he raged. "How can they see through our cloaks?" But even as human forces rallied, the main Pakled armada was already on its final approach to Earth. Thousands of warships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons primed. In the depths of Earth's planetary defense complex, technicians prepared to unleash humanity's last-ditch weapon. A series of massive launcher tubes extended from hidden silos, each containing a hyperspatially tethered antimatter torpedo. "May God have mercy on our souls," murmured the lead weapons officer as he initiated the firing sequence. The torpedoes streaked away from Earth, invisible to normal sensors. They detonated in precise formation along the Pakled fleet's approach vector, tearing holes in the very fabric of space-time. Oblivious to the danger, the Pakled ships plowed forward. As they crossed the quantum fissures, their hulls began to twist and shred. Pakled crew members screamed in terror as reality itself seemed to tear apart around them. In a cascading chain reaction, the entire Pakled armada disintegrated. Ships vanished in blinding flashes as matter and antimatter annihilated each other. The very stars seemed to dim as the awesome energies were unleashed. When it was over, nothing remained of the once mighty Pakled fleet but scattered atoms and lingering radiation. Spica and the Pakled Council watched in stunned silence as their greatest weapon, their impenetrable cloak, was rendered obsolete in an instant. As the dust settled, a human medical ship recovered John's battered escape pod. He was rushed into emergency surgery, hovering on the brink of death. Days later, he awoke in a recovery ward to find Admiral Chen standing by his bedside. "You did it, son," she said softly. "Your breakthrough saved us all." John tried to speak, but could only manage a weak cough. Chen leaned in closer. "Rest now," she said. "There will be time for debriefing later, but I want you to know, we're keeping this ability classified. The galaxy isn't ready for this kind of power." As John drifted back to sleep, he couldn't help but wonder, had averting one crisis only sown the seeds for the next? The Pakleds had been stopped, but at what cost? And what other forces might covet the power to?
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.